Today we are talking about beyond pale. And for me, that means, when I think of light colors, I just think, oh yeah, you add white to them. But as I grew in my practice, I realized what great shortcuts they were. So I'm gonna just go back a little bit of history. The pale colors, heavy body acrylics have been the core of Golden's line since like 1980. Over 40 years, heavy body has been their core to product line. And that is basically where every color that they have is represented in heavy body. And it was funny, Donna and I were just talking earlier about a color that I introduced her to. She's like, I didn't even know that existed, because she tends to use fluid quite a lot. And not every color is represented in the fluid lines. So it's interesting, you'll find colors that become your new friends just by taking a peek in the heavy body. And that's usually where new colors are introduced first, most often in the heavy body line. So back in 2018, they introduced 7 new pale light colors. And, I want to review those additions as well as the existing pale colors and just tell you why you might want them, how you to use them, how to put them to work. So let's get started with this. Let me see if I can get this going. There we go. So these are all the pale and light colors. And because I love you, I've created a PDF. So this will be up on Donna's Patreon, of course, because these colors are so new. They're not on the tinting and glazing poster that I have on the wall. So I created a tint and glaze for you of all the new colors. And what I wanted to talk about, basically I'll go over the additions. So obviously we have light bismuth yellow, this one here, light orange, light fallow blue, which is right here, light fallow green.
Yes, that's the best color in the whole world.
But you know what? This is the one that surprised me the most when I was researching this. Titan green pale is such a cornerstone of everything I do. And I was like, this didn't come out until 2018? How is that possible? I felt like that's been there since 1980. So I was a little shocked myself when I saw that was in that release. And then Titan Mars Pale, which, yum. Okay, the existing range, and I'm not covering the whites here. We're going to talk about those in a moment. But Titan Buff is one of my favorite non-white colors. Light magenta, wait till you see how this is mixed. Light green yellow shade and light green blue shade. Light turquoise phthalo. Light ultramarine blue already existed, and light violet. Those were already existing in the line. So what a bunch of pretty sherbet we have here on the screen right now. And they're just beautiful colors, but why do we need them? Okay, let's talk a little bit about them. And first of all, I'm not a salesperson, but I'm going to tell you why I like them. Now, these are what we call convenience colors, right? I mean, unlike ultramarine blue, which is a single pigment color, it's PB29 and that's it. There's nothing else in there. And light ultramarine blue, when I mixed it, that's basically about 1 part ultramarine blue to 5 parts titanium white. And that's how you get that color. But if you've ever tried to mix things that are white, it's very difficult to mix with white because you end up wasting so much white or you put too much pigment in it. So what I like about light ultramarine blue, it has all the power of ultramarine blue, but it brings out that light purpley blue tone that's in it. And it creates a lot of dramatic color variety, especially when you use it in mixes. And, it's just very unique.
I like to call this periwinkle.
Yeah, I mean, it just, for some reason, you start seeing the purple when you're looking over here on the ultramarine blue, you start seeing the purple side of it once the white gets added. And, that's why it's like, suddenly it's like, whew. But it's not that easy to mix. And so that's why it's nice they've created this color. So let's talk a little bit about white. So tinting is adding white. And that could mean adding titanium white or zinc white. And some people have never heard of zinc white. So I wanted to step back and talk about that a little bit since we're all about tinting today. Titanium white is, the monster, the wonderful white out condition of paint. As you can see up here at the top of the tube, these slashes, you can barely see them because it is opaque. It is an opaque color. Whereas zinc white, you can see the bars on these hand-painted labels, and that's because it's a semi-transparent color. That's very interesting to me because what it allows you to do is basically tint a color without changing its opacity. So you could take a quinacridone color, add zinc white to it, get a lighter color, but then still not have, you know, it be opaque or chalky. So it's a very interesting concept. Now, titanium white has a tinting strength of 42 and change. Zinc white is about 27 and change. It's about half. That means that it takes a lot less titanium white to lighten a color, and it takes a lot more zinc white to lighten a color to get like the same results. But if you want to lighten a color, like I said, without affecting its transparency, zinc white is your choice. So the difference between those two, however, is that we're so trained in acrylic painting, especially, that white color means it's going to cover everything underneath it. And that can be your gotcha. If you tint with zinc white, you're still transparent. So that's either a wonderful thing or an oh my gosh thing. So it's a learning curve. But
and I never go to zinc. I don't know why I don't. I just never go to zinc. I need to start doing that.
Well, I'll show you how Golden uses it in their own recipes. Next slide. Light ultramarine blue is mixed with PB29, ultramarine blue, and PW6, which is titanium white. And you can see it gets a bit chalky, very opaque, you know, versus manganese blue hue next to that. That is Fallow Blue. Let's see, I think that's about a 4 parts Fallow Blue to 1 part Fallow Blue green, Fallow green blue shade. Okay, start again. 4 parts Fallow Blue green shade, 1 part Fallow green blue shade, and 7 parts zinc white. So it takes more zinc white versus light ultramarine blue, which has 5 parts white. It's 7 parts white, but look, it's not pale. I would never think of that as a pale color, but it's taking those really strong pigments and raising their value up without it becoming super pale. Now you can see in the tints below on this little chart, which are done with titanium white, it becomes very opaque. But here, it's still very transparent. And that's because of the zinc white. So you're taking a super strong pigment like, you know, any of the phthalates, any of them, and put zinc white in and see where you can stretch your colors. That's what everything we've been talking about has been about, taking things and stretching them in different directions. So zinc white is something to look into, as long as you realize that you're not making it an opaque color. But look how amazing that is by just shifting it up a little bit. So it's just another color in your stash rather than being a tint. Okay, so that's how I think about, whenever I think about zinc white and, you know, and titanium white, I think about these two colors and how different they are. So it just lets you stretch the colors, almost like a glaze with some white in it. Okay, so now this is why we're talking about pale colors today, because I could tint things with white all day long and they'll just make them lighter versions of themselves and maybe show some of their tendencies. But when you use basically tinted tints, when you're using a light color, you're flexing what I call your mud muscles. You're gonna take color, things that you know about colors. For example, I know that, you know, in the first example here, the purple tone in light ultramarine blue gets neutralizes that yellow because they're complementary colors, right? And so you end up with this kind of beautiful, muddy, realistic green. And we're doing that by just a very simple recipe, 2 parts to 1 part. Not a difficult recipe at all. If you were trying to do that with white, that would be 5 parts white to 1 part blue. To, you know, it makes it a lot more complex. So using pale and light colors simplifies your mixing because they've already gotten that consistent color for you. So the first one, the purple tones neutralize the yellow and create that beautiful muted green. The next one, personal favorite. You take the blue and orange are sort of near neutrals. So you're taking that blue and the orange of the raw sienna and they're neutralizing and creating the most gorgeous, moody green, stormy skies you've ever seen. And it's just by mixing 1 part to 1 part. Simple mix, but it's not
this
dense.
Last one you go into is mind-blowing because permanent maroon is a god-awful color.
It's a difficult color to like. It is a difficult color to like, but what's interesting about it is what you and I were talking about earlier, Donna, how much you like quinacridone burnt orange. That is one of the ingredients of permanent maroon. So of course, there's something to like about it, because once again, the blue and orange tones are kind of neutralizing each other, and you get this sort of beautiful smoky purple, you know, and these colors are the colors that we want to get to, but it's always hard to guess how to. I'm just saying, jumpstart that mixing by go ahead and using a tinted tint. Okay, so this is just playing around with light ultramarine blue, and look how easy those recipes are. They're very simple, you know, and so you'll be able to refer back to those. And I'll probably plug these onto a PDF as well for you, Donna, so that they can just have these simple recipes. Okay, so if you think this color is interesting, wait until you see the next one. Light magenta. Everybody that I meet thinks light magenta is quinacridone magenta and white, and you couldn't be farther from the truth. It is not. It is naphthol red light, pyrrole orange, and titanium white. And I don't know why they do that, but I'm glad they did. So, you know, basically there is a medium magenta, by the way, in the line, and medium magenta is 1 part quinacridone magenta and 1 part titanium white. And it's usually kind of a place where most artists like to start anyway. So medium magenta is quinacridone magenta, but light is not. And what's beautiful about that, you really start seeing it in the glazes and in the tints. You start seeing that little bit of peachiness kind of come through. But it's a perfect shell pink. It has a wonderful, cool quality to it, even though, you know, we're using the pyrrole orange, but it creates these soft, beautiful backgrounds and floral highlights. Fabulous. But now let's mix with it. When you mix with it, that orange comes to play. And so light magenta with cadmium yellow, which, you know, cadmium yellow medium hue in this case, that's a strong color. And it's not really easy to shift. But Donna, I thought about you specifically. I'm like, let me create a coral for Donna. So a super simple recipe, 2 parts to 1 part. Beautiful coral color, you know, because that orange is coming into play. And the same thing when you move on to the second example, the pink is like a red, and the turquoise phthalo is a green. So the pink and the green are neutralizing each other, but they're near neutrals. So it's creating this moody green, blue, gray, perfect for ocean waters in an atmospheric setting. So if you've got like a cloudy day, or, you know, painting waters in Maine or wherever, or a stormy sky, and that's the water, it's amazing. So, and super simple recipe, once again, 2 parts to 1 part, easy to get to. And that's only because you're jump starting with your tinted tint, okay? Because it's so much
I
easier.
hope everybody's understanding that, like the tinted tint, like these colors already have the white in it, so you don't have to go ahead and mix the white into that. But I'll tell you what, I did not know about that Azurite Blue Hue or Azurite Hue. I had never heard of that color. And tell me, I hate purple. That's gorgeous.
It is gorgeous because, once again, it's just taking these 2 colors, the red, orange, and the green tones, are neutralizing each other. And so you're ending up with, you know, but they're not mud neutralizers. If anything, I think of this one more as like a slight shift. It's shifting it in a different direction. And so you're getting these beautiful, neutral, you know, just smoky colors, if you will. So, you know, with its natural mixes like yellows and color, you know, reds and things like that, it's going to shift it a little bit. But then when you use the orange component of it or the red component of it to neutralize its near complements and the blues and the greens, whoa, it just does some very interesting things, and completely unexpected when you throw Azurite Hue against light magenta to get a purple.
I mean, is it just me, but is anybody else looking at this going, oh my God, I want to rush out and make a painting using just these 3 colors? Like, I'm sitting here going, that's a gorgeous painting in the works.
Yeah, it's gorgeous, and it's got the right values too. So it's a lot of fun to jumpstart your mixing with tinted tints. You know, I don't know a better way to say it.
Can I also just jump in real quick too? I was talking about making this as a palette, but like I talk about mother colors in art. And if you don't know what that means, I made up that kind of term. But like the mother of all these colors is that light magenta. and the baby daddy is all different. So you actually could take these 4 colors, the light magenta, the cadmium yellow, the light turquoise, and the azurite, and make an entire painting and keep mixing, because they're all family members. If you're worried, will these colors look good together? The answer is yes, because they all have the same mommy.
Yeah. So just that common component, or your mother color, that makes them all go together. And that's what's beautiful about it. So that, yeah, you're exactly right. That's what we want to show here, is that, you know, using these instead of white, you're actually tying them together, where white really doesn't do that. You're tying them together with these tinted colors. Okay, one more of these colors here. Titan Violet Pale. Now, when they call this, I call this a convenience color. I don't really mean it. It is super hard to mix. This is as close as I've gotten. Look at that recipe. 20 parts white to 1 part violet oxide to 2 parts cobalt violet hue. That's as close as I've ever gotten. So I just love this thing because it's got a certain amount of je ne sais quoi. It's just got this cool quality to it. It's perfect for the inside of shells. You can throw a little bit of a metallic in there, or iridescence even, but on the shadows for white florals. So any of your really light colors, your daisies and things like that, it's an amazing color to throw in there. Someone just yesterday, I was looking at someone's painting and they were using like a silver, and I'm like, oh, but you know, because this is perfect because it's giving that beautiful shadow. And especially on skin tones, because it does have a decent amount of transparency, that purple shadow across a face. I'm gonna get a drink of my soda. I love this color. And one of the reasons why I love it is because of how it mixes.
It's in your face now too, actually.
It's in your face. It's in your face because if you mix light orange with Titan Violet Pale, those two kind of neutralize each other and create the most wonderful pale skin tone, you know, and
This is so exciting.
It's just such a beautiful basis for a skin tone. And then you can use that Titan Violet Pale for shadows, and just it'll blow your mind. And for the warm shadows, you're throwing in the light orange, and it all works together to create this beautiful thing. You want to bump it up a notch? Let's go to a different of the pale colors. Burnt Sienna, which is like a building block for me personally when I'm doing skin tones, with Titan Mars Pale. You know, gets you into the summertime, the cafe au lait, the gorgeous, you know, deeper tones. You know, and that's just a beautiful color that it creates. God bless mud. And now getting into the darker tones, I often mix burnt sienna with ultramarine hues. I'm going to go to the end real quick. That's like my staple for dark skin tones. It's like 3-to-1 mix. So I basically kept that 3-to-1 mix, but I had to sort of double the numbers in order to give you a recipe. So it's basically a 3-to-1 mix with a little smidgen of the Titan Violet Pale, lightens it just a little bit, but you know, so it gives you a nice different variety between those two colors. So once again, they're not difficult recipes, and it's probably one of the #1 questions I get when people are talking about the digital mixers. Oh, how do I get skin tones? How do I get skin tones? So, I mean, these are some of the building blocks that I use quite often, and it's, you know, 4 colors. So you can get a lot out of this. And so that's skin tones. And once again, just using your jump start with your tinted tints. Okay, so we're going to go into the digital mixer, and I'm going to show you a trick. My trick as to how to mix things when I want something but I don't have it. And so this always comes up when someone's like, oh, but you know, I see that Azurite blue and it's such a pretty color, but it only is available in heavy body and I don't own that, or I want it in fluid. I'm going to show you how. We're going to jump out of here and we're going to go to another screen. So bear with me. Hi, Brady Bunch. Okay, can you see the digital mixer now? Yes, good. Okay, so this is goldenpaints.com/mixer, or you go to resources, virtual paint mixer. Now, I've gone over this several times, but I'm just going to refresh because we do have some people here for the first time. So heavy body is the first choice that comes up for your palette, but there are other choices. So if you choose heavy body and you try to mix something, you know, based on what you know about it, you don't end up with that color. So you end up with that color being used as part of its recipe, and you're like, but wait, I don't have it. This is how you cheat. Let's see. Let's go to light magenta. All right, so I've picked light magenta. I click on it, put a 1, throw it into the mixer. You know, it's basically just going to show me light magenta. Now, this is how I get bratty. I go over to numeric. It immediately shows me what the RGB, that's the computer version, and the printing version are of those colors. So just super quick, write that down. That CMYK is 0, 43, 32, 3. Don't need to know what that means, but it's CMYK for printing. So, and you can copy this too if you want to paste it somewhere. So it helps you. Now we go back to the palette and we get out of heavy body colors. We know that light magenta is at least 2 pigments. We happen to know it's 3, but it's at least white and something. So what if I choose single pigment as my color choice? Now it's going to forcibly mix something with white to create that, because it's not going to allow itself to use any recipes that have more than 1 ingredient or any components. So now I can go over here. I've picked single pigment as my palette. I go back to numeric and I plug in that recipe, 0, 43. Let's see what it does. I love doing things live, don't you? And find a match. And boom, that's what it's telling me to use. You know, based on just that basic information, it's saying 19 parts zinc white and 1 part naphthol red light will give you that-ish. And that's using single pigment colors. I can reduce the colors and see if nope, that's out of range. I'm not going to get that, so I can undo that. So that is the easiest recipe that it came up with using single pigment colors. So this is why that's how you cheat. You basically take a heavy body color, get its numerics, and then change the palette to single pigment and input the numerics, and it'll give you a recipe. So it's a good way of just being able to use the mixer to find a quick recipe for something that you don't have on hand. Okay, I hope that's clear as mud. We'll cover it in the Q&A if it's not. I'm going to stop that and go back to my presentation.
And I think too, like when she shows this really techie, because she's such a geek, it's so amazing to have her as a reference, because it's all the stuff we wish we knew, and we're not going to remember that, but to know. And I think I've kind of gone back to the digital mixer when I need it. Like I won't remember that, but then when I'm like, oh no, I ran out of Payne's gray, or I ran out of that, or I ran out of this, I know that there's a way to figure out what I can mix to get it in a pinch. Even if you don't retain it, like right now, just know that that digital mixer does more than just make pretty colors. It helps you figure out what made the color.
Yep, it does. So it's very fun to use for that purpose. But it kind of shows you what I'm getting at here, which is that, are these really convenience colors? Because honestly, they're very difficult to recreate. And that's why they created them in the first place, so that you could have, you know, consistent colors. Because once you start messing around with trying to recreate them, you'll understand why they created them. And they're difficult to mix. Only the slightest amount of pigment, you know, added to white. So I think that speaks for itself. Instead of wasting a lot of paint, a lot of white, because you put in too much pigment, you get a consistent out of the tube. And I practice what I preach. They're all right back here because I love having that consistent color to work with. And so I'm constantly reaching for my Titan Violet Pale and my light orange just as a basis for a skin tone, because it's super easy. One part, easy. And I'm where I need to start. And so that's what I love about them. So as an artist, they're giving you a clean, consistent mix of something that, yes, you could mix, but once you try to, you're going to understand. I mean, I still haven't gotten Titan Violet Pale right, but I'm trying. But that's just because I'm a geek and I like to explore it that way. But I don't consider these, I understand why they made them, even though, you know, from a purist perspective, they are definitely mixtures. They are definitely convenience colors. But I use them all the time, especially things like Titan Green Pale, all the time as a basis for a color. So now, because in prior sessions, I know we have some new people here. In prior sessions, we've talked about value. And this handout is on Donna's Patreon, and it's basically assigning a value based on the Munsell scale to a good selection of golden colors so you can kind of understand it. When we talked about value in the prior sessions, one of the things that comes up is how do you shift things from one color to another? One of the most difficult things to do in changing the value of a color is to make a light color more shadowed or a darker value. It's very difficult to make that pretty blue flower and then have the shadow for it. It just starts looking muddy and not the same. This is where the neutral grays sing. So golden, recap, golden has, you know, a set of neutral gray colors, and they're based on the Munsell value scale. They are neutral. They are designed not to change the hue or the chroma of a color, but simply to change the value. And so what I've done here is I've created Sue is so inspiring. I had been doing some of the work Sue did. So Sue, I think it's Byrne, had posted some beautiful pages where she was playing around with this. And so I said, okay, let me show you how that works. So first of all, light fallow blue. If I wanted to mix it myself, I could mix 30 parts white to 1 part phthalo green blue shade. I'm just gonna buy the tube. But so that's how you mix it. And then take that, and I'm putting the N8, the neutral gray in there. So that is the lightest of the neutral grays. So it's giving me an immediate shift, about, you know, 20%, a little bit darker value. And then I'm going to an N6, that's another 20%. These are like 10% increments, these numbers. So it's like 10, you know, 20% darker, 20% more shadowed, 20% more shadowed. And because I'm starting with 2 colors here between the light phthalo blue and the light magenta, they're essentially a similar value to start with. Do you see how beautifully they scale exactly the same across 20%, 40%, 60% darker value? So when you've got those pink and blue flowers in your vase and there's shadow hitting them, and they're all gonna look like realistic, like it's hitting it correctly. That's something you simply cannot do, I cannot do, by trying to mix, you know, a black in them. It's very difficult. And then we try to use a complement, you're going to shift the color and it's not going to look right. So I picked some really difficult colors here, that light blue and that light pink. Yellow is another one, can be very difficult to value. And so that's why the neutral grays are so wonderful, because this is a one tube that works for everything, and especially for the lighter colors. I did want to show that, because if you've got, say, blue and pink umbrellas on the beach, and as they get farther and farther and farther away, maybe their value shifts because you want them kind of be a little bit, you know, less pulling focus as the ones that are in the front, you know, and that's how you do it. Just a slight shift with a little N8, and those umbrellas you aren't looking at as much as the ones that are in front, and that's all it takes. So it's very easy to do. Once again, I'm using the simplest of recipes. These are just equal 1 part to 1 part of each one. So simple, very powerful. So that's it. It's time for Q&Art.
There is a question that just came in. I'm scrolling down. 1 tube does everything. Which neutral gray? And I'm going to let you address that.
Well, it's not 1 tube of neutral gray. There are several. There's N8 through all the way from, you know, N1, which is considered bone black, to N2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So there's, you know, colors starting from the darkest one, but I particularly tend to use N8, N6, and usually N4, N5 the most, because those are the steps I'm making between colors. That's just my particular take on it. But you can mix throughout the range. It's really nice to do. And Sue has been posting those on Donna's group on Facebook quite a bit, and where she's just been doing every single color, every single gray mixed in with them so you can see some great examples there. So when I say one tube, I just mean this is universal. This is like those, titanium white or zinc white. It's like, do you want N8 or N5? Do you want a 5 value, a mid value for your color? In this case, it was taking a color that had a very light value. And when I put N8 into it, it actually lightened the value slightly. So it brought that white out in there a little bit more, and it lightened the value slightly. But then as I moved down, they brought the value down so that your eye isn't dragged to them as much. When they have a darker value, you don't look at them as brightly as those bright colors they're in the front. So
I was gonna say, as far as like buying neutral grays, I think you made an important point, Sally Lynn, with like, you can do the skips. You don't have to buy all of them. I have all of them because I have to have them, because she who dies with the most product wins. But like, you can do the lighter one, N8, and then skip N7 and go to N6, and then skip N5 and go to N4, and do that if you want that value.
Right, and that's the beauty of it. You don't have to have every single one. Yes, we do. Because we have full set syndrome, Donna. I mean, that's just a fact. But the fact is, when I made the examples, that's why I did them the way I did. Because most often I'm jumping to N8, N6, N4, 20%, 20%, 20% down, or up, going the other way. If you're taking a dark color and you want to make it lighter value, it works either way. So once again, we're always talking about how we're using these things, all of these products, to stretch our colors into a different direction. So that one tube just does so much more. I think we've hit on, we've tried to hit on so many different things, but we never really hit on tinting as much as I wanted to. And so that's why I really wanted to discuss this today, because in reality, I'm not using white a lot to tint. I'm jumping straight into the entire rainbow of already tinted colors because I'm wanting to change. I want to shift the color as well as lighten it almost always. And so that's why this is so important to know. So yes, you can use titanium white and zinc white to do that, the difference in opacity, or you can use this to shift and, flex those mud muscles. Do we have any more questions in the chat? Spotlight. Okay, yes, can you see Sue's page? So Sue, tell them what you did.
So I started the mother color here, and then each one is, I started with N8 and worked on to N2, and it was approximately 1 for 1.
Mm-hmm. And look at that beautiful range.
Yeah, it's amazing the colors that came out of it.
Yeah, and so that's what we went over, the more value lesson. Look at that. Wow.
And really, like, just what she's creating, there's more color to your color. And when you want to build a shadow, I think sometimes we all go to like a raw umber, or we just go to a color that's like our go-to shadow color. But with just that neutral line mixing in, you realize, oh, these are actually more natural shadows that are happening. And I think it's really important what you did, Sue, because I know that I'm a kinesthetic learner. Once I do it, I remember it. Like once I touch it and feel it, and that's a great go-to. Like when you're like, I want to paint a blue flower, oh, that's perfect in the setting because I know how far I can take it. So it's an invaluable practice. I got to applaud you, Sue, on that.
Yeah, I was amazed when I saw that on the group on Facebook because first of all, it's very heartening that someone's listening. Because I mean, I know I've encountered so many people who simply think of these as gray. They're like, oh, that's a nice gray. And
I did.
I didn't want to out you, but yeah, they do think of it. But there is so much, I am a geek, but there is so much science behind these because they worked really hard to make sure they're as neutral as possible. So they're not going towards blue or yellow or red when you're putting it in there. That's super hard to do. And I mean, I applaud Golden for them because they're amazing. And I use in my practice all the time. And so to see Sue, it was just very nice to see that because you're like, you get it, you understand. And nothing is more compelling to everyone else when, they see someone doing that. So I applaud you again. It's a wonderful thing to see. Okay.
I mean, you gave a lot of information. I'm not sure if people are like, or if they're, if they're just afraid to ask questions.
That's okay. We're always around too online.
Not afraid to ask questions. Just I keep going, oh my gosh, wow. I just had no
Hey.
idea.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And I also think like
that's
we've
what's fun about
probably
this.
all collectively invested close to $100,000 as we're sitting here in paint color, like collectively in golden. And to know that that wasn't in vain just to get one thing, that there actually is a method behind the madness of why they created things, and how I maybe I feel a little bit better about spending that much money because I know, okay, this was to help my process. Those lights, all of those tints that they make for you, that was a great explanation that I don't need to keep mixing. I always tell people when you buy paint, buy like a big tube of white and a regular size tube of other colors. But actually, I've started buying just 2-ounce tubes now because I don't need that much paint to get what I want. And I'm using the full range of colors so much more fluidly that it's been insurmountable to the practice because feel like I've just gained so much more.
I feel like I could do what Sue did, but with all the pails, I could do a book full of that. It's like, here's white and here's everybody else, and to see, once again, we're talking about just taking that tube of paint and shifting it. And it's why, sometimes it sounds very highbrow, but you'll hear artists say, oh, I don't use the paint straight out of the tube. It's like, well, yeah, we all do, but we move it, we flex it around, and we learn different ways, because I don't want someone to go, oh, that's Fallow Blue green shade. No, I mean, because how many things are actually that color in life? Well, I mean, if you're an abstract painter, use it all day long, but it's just interesting because then I've heard the exact opposite where someone was saying, oh, I would never use Fallow green blue shade. That's just a horrible color. And I'm like, have you tried mixing it with red? It's amazing because of what it does. So
Agree.
if we can do anything, if we can help people understand, the ways to just shift things around and feel comfortable trying things. And there was a question about the digital mixers. So I was going to give a quick demo of that, what I did again, just to kind of repeat how we fake out the digital mixer. So if there's not any more questions there, I think I'll just go ahead and do that real quick. Okay. Because I think this is an important point with the digital mixer, especially as we're kind of all, many of us at home. Get rid of the chat window here. The digital mixer is right up, right? We good? We see it? Yay. Okay. So an important thing when you're sitting at home, when you haven't bought a paint color yet and you want to experiment with it, you can mix it every way imaginable on here. The only thing that you need to know, from the perspective of the digital mixer, is that this swatch does not show you opacity at all. You're going to have to look at the tube information to see how opaque every one of them looks like they're opaque. And the only reason this black is here is really as a value study to show you where it is in value. So that's the first thing I definitely want to get across to everybody, that this does not show you opacity at all. But it is such a great place to come and just take two colors that without ever mixing a drop of paint, you can get really comfortable with it. You can save and write down recipes, and then when you go to buy, you have already worked with them. So it saves you so much time and money, and you can play. So anyway, back to the palette. The heavy body colors are every single color in the line. So if there's a color here that I don't own and it's a definite mixture, like let me see. I'm going to pick something. Oh, I know a good one. One of the ones that we all love so much. And where did they hide it? They always hide Payne's gray in the neutrals, and I'm like, okay. Payne's gray is a personal favorite of mine. If I go and click that and put it in the tube and put the number 1 here so that it's actually loaded into the paint mixer. Hello. And maybe I'm going to have to you're all hitting the mixer at once and it's going, Let me try again. Hit Payne's Gray, put it in the mixer, and voila, yes. There's a couple things that I'll tell you right off the bat. Yeah, I know I'm kind of going on a tangent, but the mass tone of any color is so difficult to tell what that color is when you're looking at that mass tone, which is like a thick application of it. Everything looks black. Phthalo green, phthalo blue, they look so dark in mass tone. So I always look at them and I look over here. This is the tinting range to the side. And it just gives you that real clue into what's going on with this color and how it can be stretched. So it gives you that idea. You're like, oh, you know, you'll see if it's got a purple tint to it or something. You'll be able to see that very quickly. And this is all based on science and spectrometer readings. It is accurate as heck. I have never had something come off and not work for me when I've gone from here. So to understand this line is important. This is 10 parts of the pigment with 1 part of white. And in this case, it's always titanium white. So understand that. So it's going to be a lot more powerful. So this middle one is 1 part Payne's Gray and 1 part white. So an even mix. And then down here, the most heavily tinted, 1 part Payne's Gray, 10 parts titanium white. So the tinting, sometimes you don't even want to do any mixing. You're just like, what does that color look like? Let me see. And just throw it in the mixer and you learn so much already. Okay, now, to cheat, I know that Payne's Gray is a mixture, and I know that if I run out of it, I know exactly what I can put together to create it. But let's see what Golden tells me. So to cheat, I'm going to go over here to numeric, and I'm going to write down, or hit copy, write down the CMYK, the recipe for it. So 3526087 is the recipe. So I've got the recipe. Now I'll go back over to palette. And so that if I type that in, it's not going to just give me Payne's Gray. I'm going to go tell it in the palette to only use single pigment colors in order to mix it. So only things with 1 ingredient each will be used to mix it. And that way, they're not going to throw Payne's Gray at me as, oh, because if I went right here, right now, I'll just do this. If I used heavy body still and I went in numeric, I'll even switch it to, I'll be a brat, I'll switch to fluid because I know it's in there too. If I go in here and I put in that recipe, it's going to give me Payne's Gray. I love doing things live. Don't fail me now. I put in the recipe and I hit find match and it says, hey, oh, Payne's Gray with a little bone black. But you know, it's giving me Payne's Gray in the recipe and that doesn't help me at all because I don't have Payne's Gray at home right now. So the way to cheat is to go to the palette, switch it to single pigment, and then throw those numbers in. Oh, good, it kept it for me. And so it's going to tell me how to mix it. Now, this looks like a really complex recipe, and it doesn't really look anything like my Payne's Gray. So I'm going to hit reduce colors. That's much better. It's having me do ultramarine blue and burnt umber. Let's try reducing colors again. Bone black. That's nothing like it. Undo that reduction. Okay, so it's telling me that. Now that's interesting because I know that it's ultramarine blue actually and carbon black that make this color. So I'm going to go back here and kind of mess with it. But anyway, it just gives you that hint because this looks an awful lot like what our Payne's Gray tints look like, right? Isn't that great? Now, I know I've brought this up before, and I'm just going to bring it up one more time, that if you're looking online, if you go under products, heavy body has every color, so you can start there. And if I go to Payne's Gray, which they hide at the bottom, all the information I need to mix it is here. And I have uploaded, I can upload it again, I've uploaded a list to Donna's Patreon of what all these pigment common index codes are. These, it says PB29, PBK7. That's the recipe for Payne's Gray. That swatch doesn't even really look much like Payne's Gray.
I don't know if this is the place we would have the answer, but I'm gonna throw this out there because Sue asked, is there a place to find out the opacity?
That's all listed here. So they've got under Payne's grade, they have opacity, transparency, semi-opaque. So
There you
it
go,
tells
Sue.
you, so on the technical detail, and that's where you have to click. If you go to any color at all, you know, let me pick something prettier.
Because my answer was, it's on the front of the tube. But I'm sure Sally has a better place.
Well, it is on the front of the tube, but if you're not looking at a tube, if you're trying to figure things out and you're, you know, shopping, the front of the tube definitely has it with those bars, you know, those little black bars across and the swatches painted across it. But here under the technical detail, because it comes up and all it has is this, and people never click here.
This was a great question, Dorothy. What is the difference between semi-opaque and semi-transparent? I feel like this
Because
is an
it's not
oxymoron.
it's not quite opaque on that side, and it's not quite transparent. And there's a range of like 10 numbers. So there really is a range. You've either got opaque or transparent, or a little less than transparent, or a little less than opaque. So they're not the same, you know, it's not interchangeable. So, I mean, and that's all
So
based on,
semi-opaque would mean it's more opaque than it is transparent, and semi-transparent would mean it's more transparent than it is opaque.
yes, pretty much. I mean, that's the difference between when we were looking at our zinc white and our opaque, you know, titanium white. Titanium is opaque, zinc white is semi-transparent. Because it definitely, if you do a thicker application, it definitely is, you know, it's not transparent, but it's got a little bit, it's just all in the eye of the beholder, you know. But anyway, when you click on a color, it tells you which medium, you know, which viscosities of it's available in, and don't neglect looking at the technical detail, because that's what it's going to tell you. Oh, that's a single pigment. That's what it's made with. It's transparent, got perfect light fastness. Ooh, Munsell information, just all kinds of good stuff. If you want it, it's all free and given away to you there. So you have all the information about every color. And so, you know, then you can take that and use it as you will. But if you're looking for something that's transparent, you know, just starting by clicking on the colors, you know, you can pretty much see in the swatches, but, you know, that's why this black bar is here. It shows you how transparent it is. And then of course, down here, when they start to put tints in it, 1 part white and versus 10 parts white, it becomes more opaque. And remember, Golden's tints are always, in this case, in these charts and on the mixer, they're using titanium white. So just remember that. And the only way you know that zinc white is involved is, for example, when I look at the recipe for light magenta, which we covered today, it has PW6, that's titanium white. If I look at, what was the other one I showed you, manganese blue hue, which I would never think of as a tint, but it is, it has, that's not accurate. It has PW4 actually. It has zinc white in it. So
a good question was asked, but you're the better person to speak to it. The question was, does open paint, is it student grade?
no way. First of all, don't get me on my soapbox. Golden does not in any way, shape, or form believe in the phrase, and neither do I. I think it should be stricken from the English language, student grade. Nothing that Golden makes is student grade. And my problem with it is this. When colors are student grade, they're also sort of ratioed, so they don't mix the same way that artist colors do. And so that's very troublesome when you're learning with something and then you go to use, you know, what the paint you can now afford, and it doesn't work the same way at all. But there's just more binders, more fillers, more stuff in there, because pigment is the most expensive part of paint. And so one of the things that I like to show people, if you're getting started, buy the best thing you can afford. But also there's a way to get the best thing you can afford. If we go back to the paint mixer, one of the choices in the palette list is series 1 and 2 colors. Paints have a series on them on the label, series 1 through series 9. That's why when you go to a store, they usually only have 9 price points up at the display, because that's all they price them by based on what series they're in. So if it's a series 1 paint, they're all the same price. So series 1 and 2 are the least expensive, but still artist grade colors. So regardless of whether it's an open or fluid or whatever, it's the pigment that makes that determination. So if you want to find, you know, a yellow that you can work with that's an inexpensive yellow, this is them. These are the least expensive paints that exist in the golden line. And so you can start here and quite a range that you can work with. All those neutral grays, by the way, are series, I think series 1 or 2. So, you know, they're the least expensive paints in the line. And of course, titanium white, you know, not expensive. So you can start there with a good primary yellow and a nice cobalt blue. God, how often do we see that in mixing, Donna? And, you can make your greens from there. You know, there are no reds in the series 1 and 2s. You know,
can you speak just real quickly as to what the open is then? Because probably the question was, why is it an open paint? What does that mean?
Oh, I can absolutely speak to that. Do you see? I use them quite a lot. The reason they're open, they were formulated so that the paints stay wet longer. So you have more time to mix and, you know, more time to mess with it. Not dissimilar to an oil paint, for example. It is an acrylic, but it's got that factor in it that allows you to continue blending like you would with an oil. And I don't know the science, don't understand the science behind it. I would love to have a materials specialist on here, but I can literally even spritz it with a little bit of water or open thinner and literally open it back up again and work with it some more. So unlike acrylic paints generally, they're plastic when they're dry. So when it's dry, you're done. There's nothing you can do to change it. But with open, they have created something that literally stays wet longer, blendable longer. You don't really want to apply it thickly because it will take a long time to dry. But I'm going to give you an example of why I love them. And that's right next to me. When I came down to Florida, to this little studio, this is basically an entire palette of open paints. And I put this together in December. And this is little tiny watchmaker tubes, basically. Watchmaker part tins. So they're aluminum tins and they're filled with open paints. I'm gonna get rid of the share. Okay, so these are aluminum tins and they're filled with open paints. And I put these in here in December. And because they're aluminum, which is the same, basically the same material that paint tubes are made out of, every one of these are still fresh and beautiful. I can use all of them. They're still as wet as the day I put them in here. And so, you know, it's just.
I certainly.
I heard someone talking. So anyway, it's just, that's part of the reason why I like them is because I can go do plein air painting. I can go paint outside. I can go on site, you know, somewhere and do painting and have that same experience that someone who's an oil painter has, but with my acrylics. So, and also the other area that have some specialty in is printmaking. And in printmaking, you have much more time to continue layering and manipulating and doing what you want to the piece until you actually pull the print. So that's why open exists.
Jelly plating as well. Sometimes for jelly plating, because it stays wet and workable a little bit longer is a good reason to use that too.
Yep, you definitely put that. I mean, that's my personal choice when I'm doing jelly plate printing. Always open. And they do make an open medium. It does not make your paints into open, but it will make them open long. Open, yeah. So this is a way of taking your existing heavy body paints and giving it some open qualities. It doesn't make it the same, but for example, there are colors like Azurite Hue that don't exist in golden open. And so you can make it work similar to your open paints. It'll just extend the open time.
All right, so 2 questions. Interest in the watchmaker tin, so seeing where you got that. And the other question was by Tony, who is asking about how much water can you add to paints? And I said no more than 30%. He said he was adding like 80%, and maybe you can speak to the science part of it. And I said that it makes them unstable and it will break them down for the longevity, but you probably can speak better to the science part.
They won't stay attached to the supports. Basically, it's going to come off. It's not going to adhere to the support if you put that much water in it. So it's much better to use mediums that at least have an acrylic binder in them. So instead of water, always use a medium. Use a fluid medium of some kind if you want to get some more fluidity to it. You can always use a fluid medium. I mean, we were talking about that the other day, glazing liquid, as a retarder. So you can definitely put a certain amount of water, but you're going to break down the science of it, and it's not going to adhere to the support. So it'll start cracking.
I like the visual of this is your paint on medium on water, like, too much water, like your brain on drugs. And then these are the molecules, but then as you add more water, they become more further and further and further apart from each other because you're diluting them. And that's why it breaks down. So they're much more sturdy when they're next to each other. And then the more water, they'll start to float away. It's your brain on drugs.
Elementary school teacher part of you. It also, you'll tend to see water will actually dilute your pigment versus medium does not.
And the question he just asked is how much medium can you use? And that's as much as you want because it's a binder.
Pretty much as much as you want. I mean, and all of this is, if you go to justpaint.org, the sciencey part is all there. And you'll find articles with charts all about it. In fact, that's I think it was Ina had a question about painting on leather. And, let me just show you something real quick. Because, I mean, if you want to see Golden is one of the most open companies when it comes to sharing the data. And so this is just an article about painting on leather with acrylics. And so they talk about it. They break down surface preparation options. Look at all these different painting on shoes. They show you different processes and how it worked, when it was treated, when it was untreated, et cetera. So that's just about, paint. But if you have a question about anything and you can't find the answer on here, you can send an email to help@goldenpaints.com, and the paint geeks are there to answer your question. So if you can't find it on justpaint.org, you can work there, but all of the information about that stuff is here.
And justpaint.org, that's a Golden reference.
Think about it as like the Golden blog for geeks. So they basically have all kinds of different information here, and especially when it comes to new things, doing marbling, doing paint pouring, they talk about everything, the new paints, acrylics on non-porous surfaces. So they spend a lot of time testing everything. And when they come out with a new idea or a new way of doing it, they share all of that information on here. And so they even go into the complete process of how open paints were developed. And there's a big article by Ulysses. Read it. It's amazing as to
Sally,
what they were developed for. Yes.
is that this is Ina, and I had that question. And
Yeah.
do I see that article on help@goldenpaint.org?
No, help at Gold. That's an email address. If you want that article, can you see this at the top of the thing? It's justpaint.org, and you can just go to the top and type in leather.
Oh,
For the
so
search.
I don't go to Golden, I go to
Justpaint.org.
Okay, the other question I have is, I've got all these products that I bought for different classes, and I don't even know what they are and if they're interchangeable. What do you use gloss super heavy gel for?
Gloss super heavy gel. Well, first of all, the gloss is changing the, God, my words are escaping me. I need some caffeine. Gloss is basically changing the finish. So it's gloss or matte. And then super heavy means it's kind of like, think about whipping egg whites. It's so that it has peaks. It's adding that viscosity, that texture to whatever paint you're using. So that's why you're putting that gel into a paint that had, maybe if you were using it with a fluid or even a heavy body or an open, to just add more texture to it. And
Okay, so you mix it in with the paint.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
You're
That
welcome.
was a good question. One of the things I learned, I think it was from a Golden person too, was anything that has the name medium means mix paint with me. So the gel medium, glazing medium, whatever medium's out there, it's basically something you're to mix color with to get a different effect.
Yep, and then they have grounds, and grounds are made to be put on a surface to change how that surface reacts. So for example, there's something called pastel ground. And this, think of it like gesso. Gesso is a ground that makes paint, you know, stick to that support better. Pastel ground is something that allows you to work like with pencil and colored pencil and stuff on a canvas, for example. You know, so you can do drawing more on your piece, and it gives you the kind of that gritty drawing surface. So that's what grounds are for. They're for changing the surface of your ground.
This was a great question, and I love answering this question because I felt like such a smart person. So Dorothy asked, can you mix airbrush medium with acrylic paint? So this is my favorite part of this whole thing. So Golden made airbrush paints, right? And airbrushing kind of had its day in the sun, and it's not a huge industry. I'm sure it is, not to put down any airbrush painters, but, and they said, oh, let's get smart and change our airbrush paints, rename them to high flow paints. So the high flow paints really were airbrush paints. They just put a new name, added more colors, but they never changed the name of the medium. And the medium is still called Airbrush Medium. So basically Airbrush Medium is clear high flow paint. And yes, you can mix that with your other paints to make it more fluid-like. Did I say that right?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, that's exactly right. And it's interesting how mediums do cross the different paint lines. I'll give you a perfect example, something that I am just starting to experiment with in my spare time. But recent addition to the line is the So Flat paints. So Flats are matte. Think of them like acrylic gouache.
I bought them.
So Flat are like, think of them like an acrylic gouache. But what I really wanted to be able to do with this was put it in a marker. And the recipe for putting it in a marker involves open thinner.
Oh.
I know, you would never think these two would go together, but this is how you, and this is the kind of information that you find on the website, where they're literally telling you exactly how to do everything when it comes to their products and their mediums. So, you know, definitely spend some time on here. You're going to be amazed just if you go into, you know, mediums, gels, and pastes. Everything you wanted to know about every product they have is here. And I think so many people don't go to the Golden website because they don't sell direct to the public. So you're used to going to Blick or Jerry's or, you know, all of the different varieties of places you can go to buy things, but the resources are here. And so everything you ever wanted to know about how something works, and especially in the case of like So Flat, I'm going to show you, they literally put all the technical details about something that brand new and quite interesting. You know, there's videos about it, yada, yada, yada. But then they have literally product information sheet. And this gives you all the other funky things you can do with it. Like how it works with other, you know, what are the best mediums to mix it with, et cetera. And they specifically put together a recipe for using it with markers. It's right here, empty markers. 3
And
parts.
that's important referencing, because usually high flow paints people use in markers. It's the consistency of what you would put into a marker and then write with it.
Yeah, and this allows you to use these as an acrylic gouache, but if you wanted to have something in a marker and have that more detailed application, you'd still get this beautiful flat. It literally, I won't say self levels, but it levels enough that you don't, it minimizes brush strokes so they're almost gone. Now put that in a marker and be able to do that with a black. I'm over the moon, because that's the one thing about acrylics. Sometimes they do have a lot of shine to them.
And it's hard to use other products with them because of that glossy shine. So if you like to doodle over your artwork, the So Flat line will actually make it nice and, I guess, the right porousness to adhere. Is that what it is? It just makes it almost like
I think it's giving it a tooth. It's giving it just
the word I
enough
was looking
tooth.
for.
Yeah, it's just enough tooth that things can play on there better. So it's really fun to use as like an acrylic gouache. So if you've ever thought about getting into gouache, you know, it is acrylic, so it's not going to re-wet, you know, like a watercolor gouache is, but it's really wonderful for as an acrylic gouache. I've been playing around with that a lot. So the markers are next. Let's see. So, gosh, anything else, folks?
I didn't see any more.
Allie,
Go ahead, Ina.
hi, I have another question. When it says in this thing about painting on leather to use the low flow paint, but if I only have the the thicker paint, heavy body, is there something that I can do to add to it so that it makes it low flow?
Low flow.
Would that
Or
mean
not
heavier
low flow,
bodied,
but-
not fluid?
No, fluid, yeah, it says heavy body, it says to use, oh shoot, I can't find it now.
We will-
Thinner paint, because it will adhere better and see.
Okay,
Uh,
so it's saying, so you have heavy body and you want to make it thinner. So I would,
Right.
depending on what you're looking at, if you want to make it a little more matte for the leather, just get like since you've got heavy body, go ahead and throw like some matte glazing liquid in there. I think that would probably help out to bring it just a little bit more fluid. You just don't want
Okay.
to have a thick application. So just a little bit of like a matte glazing liquid. Now, one thing to know about mattes in general, any of the matte liquids, the mattifying means it basically adds kind of almost a white sheen to things. So just know that when you're doing your application, that when it dries, we know, for example, that acrylic paints dry about 20% darker. So just keep that in your thoughts, and you might want to do a little test spot before you do it, just to see how that works. You can add a matting agent to the paint as well.
How about, is there a gloss agent that you can add instead of,
Absolutely, there is matte and gloss
okay,
in
thank
the glazing
you.
liquids. You betcha.
One of the questions was about marker brands. I use empty Montana markers. Do you use a different brand?
No, I'm pretty sure that's exactly what I have. For a short while, Golden was putting out some, where are my markers?
Yeah, they used to put out Montana markers in their set of their high flow.
Yeah. I'm laughing because I know I have them sitting right here because I was messing around with them the other day. Okay, so yeah, these are all Montana.
And they come in different, just like markers do. They come in different nibs and different
Yeah.
thicknesses and all that kind of stuff. I would actually tell you to get them on Amazon. And if you go through the link on my website, the shop link, then I get a little kickback. But yeah, I just use the empty Montana marker. They're easy.
Yeah.
They unscrew. Oh, there you go. Look at all the different sizes she has.
Yeah, so you can get all kinds of different sizes. The nice thing about these compared to some that you might find in the market is they do have mixing balls in them.
And you can
they're
replace the
beautiful
tips
mixing
too,
balls.
right?
Yeah, you can replace the tips. I mean, it's an art supply. So you do want to get the best one you can afford. These are refillable. They're made to be used again and again and again. And, I've found as long as you're using the right medium in them, that's why I wouldn't put so flat in here directly because it would just clog it. So you do want to have something that's got some flow to it, like the high flows.
Debbie can't see you, just your screen. I'm not
Oh.
sure I can see you.
Let me get rid of my screen. Hello.
She just wants to see your pretty face.
Mouse Olympics. Okay. Things. So this is like a no brand. I probably got this direct from Golden when they were doing them, and they probably just didn't have any labeling on them. And then this is the Montana version. It's got the mixing balls in it. They are refillable. And so.
And they just unscrew, and then you just pour whatever the high flow is really easy to pour in because it's got that nice little round cap. But
Yes.
not sure how you would. I have no idea how Sally Lynn is filling her markers when she mixes the flat and the what was the medium you were
So flat with the open thin.
How are you getting it into the tube? Like I get the high flow, but
I have these little squeeze droppers. The bulb on the
suck
end,
it up?
that you just suck it up and then.
Like the baby nasal squeezers?
Oh God, no. Not that.
Like a baby turkey baster?
I want to say, who is it? There was a company that I was doing stuff with, resin at for a while, and I think it was Pebeo had these little bulb squeezy things. So you just like, you just suck it up, but yes, if you've got the baby nasal thing, okay.
Just be pushing it into the tube.
I want to show you the one that I found the other day. This is one of the Montana markers. Look at this.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
Gigantic.
And good to note out the Montana company, the Montana brand. It is a brand of paints, but they're for like graffiti. They're fine art, high end graffiti. art paint. So that's why like you get this range of markers, because you can imagine like somebody doing graffiti art or a mural, filling it with the paint to kind of get these big marks.
So I'm going to have to send you a link. You said someone was interested in finding out where I got my watchmaker tins, because there is a place for those.
It's called an eyedropper. Thanks, Dorothy.
I
like my way better.
A couple of these that I've gotten from them, and I just love them because
Does Harbor Freight do them too?
haven't seen them there.
Okay.
But this is literally a watch repair place. And so they've got them, and they have them with the cute little clear acrylic tops. So you can like see everything that's inside. So like this is another one that I have. This is my bigger travel palette. It's got more paint because these are the colors I use most often. And that one.
And do you use it? Because I feel like I would do all that work just to stare at it on a shelf and be like, so pretty. Look at what I did. It's so pretty.
It's the only way for me that it makes sense to take golden out in the field, you know, because I really like to go paint. I like to go to the beach or, you know, just sit in front of a plant on my porch and paint. And it's a lot easier to have a little squish of everything than it is to have tubes.
Somebody said you can use pharmacy vitamin droppers. You got to know a pharmacist for that one.
Maybe.
Somebody's asking where are they from? You just got to look it up. You're not sure where you bought it.
Which thing?
The watchmaker tin.
I have it on my blog. I can take a quick look.
And honestly, you could probably go into Google and search watchmaker tins. It's a real thing. It's not like she just didn't call it a watchmaker tin. It's a real name of it. You probably can find some, but
there was a nice little company that I thought they had good service. I got everything really quickly. I don't have an affiliate link or anything with them, but I really like.
And I'm not sure where everybody's from here, going back to your watchmaker tins, that like if you live in an arid, a really dry climate, open acrylics are probably the better thing for you to use because they take a little bit longer to dry fully. I will say the one caveat to open paint, if you are using open paint and you don't live in a dry environment, like I love mixing and blending, but it does have a tendency to stay tackier longer. So if you're working in an art journal and you close the art journal and you used open paints, note to self, you might want to leave the art journal open, let it dry, like walk away with it and you're done instead of closing it and walking away, because the nature of it is to stay wet a little longer. It might be dry to the touch, but it stays tacky.
I use a little that wax parchment paper in between my pages. It's funny, the same thing that when I get these charts from Golden, they have like thin parchment paper, because even the, can you even see me? I'm trying to find this thing. Even because even these come and they are slightly tacky, which I find interesting because how long have they been in here? But it's this kind of stuff is really great for you to be able to put in between your sketchbook pages. But yeah, it's definitely some planning.
The Dorlands Wax, I use this a lot. I actually use it on everything because when it's done, it gives it a nice buff. It's kind of like turtle wax for your artwork. So you can use it on the top of a canvas just to give it a nice kind of look. But this is also the stuff for cold wax painters. You can mix oil paint into this and make it like texturized too. So I'm not really sure its purpose was actually just to turtle wax your pages. It's more for cold wax applications, but I use it on everything just because it makes the colors kind of rise. I don't know. And it keeps everything from sticking. I live in North Carolina, so it's humid here.
I found the watch tins.
Say one more time.
So I found the watch tins. I think they're out of Ohio, esslinger.com. So they got all kinds of aluminum storage boxes and with
$12.99. That's a deal.
It is a deal. It's not expensive at all. And you can get all kinds of different varieties. This is the size I chose just for my.
If you buy 9, you can get 5% off.
5% off.
If you buy 50,
seriously, $12.99, and I love this little thing. And it is high quality. I mean, the lids stay on. They don't like screw on, but they stay on. They're like pinched, So they stay on nice. They have clear acrylic tops, so you can see all your contents. And it has a little piece, you can see it in the picture, a little piece of foam in the lid that kind of, keeps them away from, from moving, and because I can even travel with them. So great little site. Literally watchmaker parts. Who knew?
I would not say it would work for alcohol inks. They're too liquidy.
No,
They
don't
need to
do
have
that.
Bit of thickness.
No. Now,
Because they're not actually, not really, they're not sealed.
they're not sealed. If you want to take an alcohol ink and do something with them, just get a plastic white palette, put a couple drops in, let it dry completely, stick that in a Ziploc bag, and then you just take your blender pen or whatever, and only spritz, you can spritz blending solution. Only this blending solution can be spritzed. Let me bring myself up to make sure I'm not passing bad information on to you. You cannot use Ranger alcohol blending solution in a mister. It can never be airborne because that's got resins in it. You don't want that airborne or in your lungs. So you can use something like this, or
What's
even
that called? What do you have? What is
this is
this?
Copic various, it's blending solution from Copic for alcohol markers, or you can use rubbing alcohol. That's a lot easier to find sometimes. So you can definitely put it on a white plastic palette, put drops of all your colors, put them in a Ziploc. They're not going anywhere because they're going to dry, but you can reactivate them with this and then go to town painting on your U-boat. But don't put a whole 2 mLs of alcohol ink in one of these and expect, no, don't do that.
But you'll have a really pretty colored tin when you're done.
As well as all your luggage or whatever you were carrying it in.
So how are we with questions? Is there any like burning desires or questions that you feel like didn't get answered, or maybe even suggestions? Because we always like what your next question is for the next time. Feel like I can do a little. Okay. Once I cabbage patch, the questions are over. Just kidding.
Well,
all right, well,
thank you everybody for joining us.
I feel like the tints being introduced into my life has been not only just surprising, that I'm surprised, like you mentioned that green pale, that Titan green pale, it's surprising what that color makes when it's mixed with like something like anything. It's like, why did that color end up being that at the end? So I have been playing with some of the pale colors. I've started buying them. I told Sally Lynn that, she's horrible because I've now spent how much money on buying all of these colors I didn't have. I had no idea. I was like, how many colors are there? And she's like, I think 108. I'm like, I think I'm at like 75. This is bad news. So I've been finding that mixing them, and I'm just going to show you this page. So I'm so excited. I'll be doing a reveal, but I'm at 1 page left in the book of this big book that I've been doing the color studies. And it's literally the cover that I was like, oh, I'll have to do that page. But I did a color study. This was a cadmium orange based color study, but that Titan green pale was the mixative. And it just, look at the colors at the top. You're like, oh, those were going to be god awful. And then you're like, that Titan pale was such a neutralizer in that palette that the colors kind of stayed a bit vibrant yet dulled. And I was just so surprised at what I got. So I am slowly mixing in these pale tints and seeing how they're changing my palette, just for the better, to be honest, because I would have just gotten light orange. And now by mixing in that pale, I'm getting this interesting orange. That was my 2 cents for that.
May I ask
Yeah.
a question? Donna,
Of course,
may I ask you a
yes.
question? I'm looking at the color studies that several of you have shown, and I understand that you have the cells and the grid, and you're mixing the top color and the bottom color and coming down the grid. But I see 2 little swatches of color. So is it just a different ratio of the mix, or is that a tint? Or I just Can you explain that?
Yeah, of course.
Great.
So all of these, this entire series of color studies is on my Patreon, start to finish.
Oh,
And then
okay.
I take a palette of colors, I mix it. And what I think you're referring to is this bottom part here. Oh, sorry, here.
Yes.
So this is like when, sorry, you take 50-50 and you mix it. This is what you
Okay.
get. But to take the study
Okay.
further, what if you
Mhm.
bias it? So yes, I mixed this. This happened to be yellow ochre and teal, which was the color that I got
Mhm.
here.
Mhm.
But what if I take that and really explore if I have more yellow ochre or more teal? And this creates a bias study. And
Okay.
then I take another color in there and I'm like orange and that Titan green. Look at how beautiful that
Mhm.
orange becomes. And this is why this is called a bias. I lean it towards one side of the scale or the other. And this is just something that I've started adding into my own practice. This is not everybody needs to do it, but I wanted to, like, when I get excited about that Titan green pale, I'm like, wait a minute. I liked it when it was 50-50. How will I like it when it just gets
Let's
stretched
start
out?
stretching
So,
it.
Okay. And this is on your Patreon?
yes. So
Okay, I will-
so basically everything I'm doing and studying in my personal artist life, I am including in this Patreon. And think of it like a community. It's like, I invite you to my art studio. This is what I'm doing. And you can decide what tier. So, the $5 tier, which is the entry level tier, it's $5 a month, but you also get, I think there's like, I'm going to say 200 at this point lessons on Patreon. Everything at the $5 tier is archived. So even though you might say, I'm just going to pay 1 month at $5, you have access to everything that's come before it for that $5, including the current month. So what the color studies is basically that $5 tier is like art journaling, but I make the color study available at that $5 tier. But for the upper tiers, you get the art process. What do I do with it? So that girl painted in there. The $20 tier is like the meat. You're going to get almost everything for that $20 tier. The upper tiers are more for, you get like art challenges, art critiques. It's more of a business. Like if you want to change from a hobbyist, how do I do lighting? How do I record things? How do I frame my artwork? How do I price my artwork? It's kind of like the upper tiers for that. But the $20 tier is like the meat.
Yeah,
But
the
I do
$50
make
tier is the
everything we
chocolate
do in the
souffle.
color collab and all of the downloads Sally Lynn provides for that $5 tier.
Oh, wow. That's wonderful. And so can I go in at $5 and then change next month and
Yeah, it's
bump it
really
up?
fluid. So you can go in at $5. You can even stay at $5 and be like, all right, she's got a couple more lessons I want to look at.
Yeah.
Next month, I'm going to the $20 tier and I'm going to consume it all.
Okay.
Then I'm going to go
Sounds
back
great.
down. So yeah, you can fluctuate. Or even if you wanted a critique, if you want, hey, I've been working on this, can you give a critique? I even have a mentor tier. If you're like, hey, I just want this month, I'd really like you to help me get to wherever it's going. Like you really can fluctuate between those. And then there's the tier I haven't mentioned is the collector tier. The only difference with the collector tier, you get like the business stuff and everything, but you get a free piece of artwork in the mail. Well, I guess it's not free if you're paying for that tier, but you're getting like a collect. So I create an original piece of artwork for each
Nice.
person.
Thank you for explaining that to me. I'll see you there. Sounds wonderful.
And there is, for those of you, because if you all got a ticket, you saw the Join Me Live on my website at donnadowney.com. That Join Me Live link is all the Zooms and the live classes. But at the end of the month, and I forget, it's the 20-something, I'm doing a Patreon, about Patreon. What is it? What do I get? I'm afraid of new things, because that's kind of how I am. That's technology. I have another new login. For the love of God, I can't remember my login to anything else. So I've got a new one. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. Actually, Deb has a little slide in there because she is a part of Patreon and she's given me a testimonial. But yeah, I'll do that at the end. It's at the end of the month. So you can register and get a ticket. It's free. It's free.
Okay.
So you can hang out.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Bye, guys.